Down here, things only get better with time. It's why we perfected the art of the scenic route, and why we also love a game that takes all day to play. It's why we know that when we welcome old friends again, everything that's great here will be even better. 'Cause whether it's a long walk, a long lunch, or a long-awaited hello, there's nothing like Australia.
Hello and good morning to those joining us from India, and good afternoon to those viewing this in Australia. I'm Petula Thomas, Director of the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce for our members in both countries, and on behalf of the Chamber, Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj and Vice President Deepak Padaki, who is here with us today, I'd like to welcome you to our closing session. I'd also like to especially welcome Mr. Manish Gupta, Consul General of India, joining us from Sydney. Thank you for being here, Consul General. Ambassador Anil Vadva, who is here with us. Thank you, Ambassador. Bhavik Damodar from KPMG. And I'd also like to thank Minister M.C. Sampath, Honourable Minister of Industries, Government of Tamil Nadu, and Mr. Peter Varghese AO, who we will hear from today. This first of its kind initiative, and definitely the Chamber's largest in 31 years, was inaugurated by the Honourable Dan Tehan MP, Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Government of Australia, this Tuesday. We've had strong support and participation from both the Indian and Australian government, federal, state level and diplomatic missions throughout these 3 days, and we're very grateful for that. 16 curated sessions, curated by some of the finest moderators, industry experts, 80 speakers from both countries, 37 delegates who will be facilitating meetings for this entire month, over 1,000 people watching the session, 55 social media tags, and 17,700 post impressions on LinkedIn. Over the month of March, our 20 partners will work with us to facilitate B2B and B2G meetings for our 37 delegates looking for business partnerships. So there are more outcomes to look out for. But what cannot be quantified, though, but this trade mission has showcased so well, was the significance of strong people-to-people links and the passion that our people from both countries have to share together to take this bilateral relationship to the next level. The Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce and all of us, we were just a facilitator who provided the platform for this. We have some of the greatest minds from government, business, and academia give us their time and thoughts. And together with the key stakeholders, our knowledge partner KPMG, CII, and our working group, we'll be submitting a paper to both governments with recommendations and suggested next steps going forward. Some of the strong messages that we heard across all sessions were this is going to be the digital decade. India is trying to identify new partners to collaborate with and looking to invest in innovation assets. Across several sectors, Australia's startups have access to technology, while India can provide scale for commercial production and a cost-effective manufacturing base. For Indian startups, Australian market is a great launchpad to prove themselves before moving on to other markets. Great work has been done already by India and Australia, elevating ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership, and we'll hear more about this from Varghese AO and Ambassador Anil Vadva. However, a well-defined action plan is required to maximize the potential benefits out of these strong ties, and that's what we'll endeavor to do and play a small role as a facilitator. To give the opening remarks, I would like to welcome Mr. Manish Gupta, Consul General of India in Sydney. I'd like to introduce Mr. Gupta. Mr. Gupta is a career diplomat and a member of the IFS since 1998. In the course of a diplomatic career spanning over 20 years, he has held various positions in New Delhi and abroad. He has extensive experience in dealing with multilateral issues. Prior to assuming his current responsibilities, he served in the Ministry of External Affairs as Joint Secretary for Overseas Indian Affairs, overseeing migration and mobility, immigration policy, labor and manpower cooperation, skills development and initiatives in welfare and protection of overseas Indian related matters. He was also CEO of India Center for Migration, which is a think tank of the ministry on matters related to international migration. We are so pleased to have you with us, Consul General, and with that, I'd like to invite you to give your opening remarks, and thank you for all the support we received.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thomas, for a very generous introduction. Good afternoon to all the friends, colleagues joining from Australia, and good morning for all the delegates who are joining from India. It's indeed a privilege to join today by this virtual trade mission launched by the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce. It's quite heartening for me that it is a very well calibrated session spreading over a period of 4 days. And as you were saying, that we have 16 curated sessions with over 80 speakers. But that also speaks, about the volume of interest that both sides have in advancing this partnership. Personally, to me, as well as to the government, I always believe technology and innovation, these are two sectors that have great resonance here in Australia as well as back home in India. And I think we have almost covered a 360-degree bird view of all segments, be it agri-tech, health, fintech, startups, e-commerce, education, because these are the sectors we eagerly look forward to from both the sides. Thanks to the chamber led by President Sanjeev Bajaj and the entire team. But it is on a broader context, we always talk about once in Australia, cricket, Commonwealth and curry. We say these are the three things which binds us together. But we always feel, we have much similarities beyond that. Because as societies, we are which nurture knowledge and innovation. We respect and promote diversity. And in fact, that diversity and multiculturalism is one of the biggest strengths of India as well as for Australia also. Because that provides you the ability also to adapt and embracing technology. And the good thing about our relationship is on a very sustainable footing. We have nearly 700,000 strong Indian-Australian community here in Australia. Most of these are professionals represented by our IT, fintech firms, manufacturing sector, and they are the ones who provides a lasting foundation for our relationship. In fact, they are the living bridges for both of us. And when it comes to complementarities, Australia as being a developed country, we have surplus financial capital here. India, we have enormous, excellent human capital. Australia has resources. India needs those resources for its development. Some of the cutting edge research, whenever I have a chance to visit here, the universities and industry is being done here. But upscaling, probably India is the biggest possible opportunities over here. So these are huge complementarities that offers the space to both sides. For my Australian friends, many a times it's difficult for them to envisage that it's an India which is working on all dimensions, all aspects of the technology spectrum. So they are very pleasantly surprised when they come to know that India is home to over 1,200 MNCs. They have their global in-house research centers back home in India. And 50% of them are nearly dedicated to research and developments. A country that is home to nearly 40,000 startups. So this is a message that we need to percolate deeper and deeper. And I'm really thankful to Ambassador Wadhwa is there, Ambassador Peter Verghese is joining us today, because they are the architects of our strategies for India and Australia. And Ambassador Wadhwa, sir, I would like to inform you that your strategy has been very well received here in Australia. And in fact, during the last 6 weeks, I think we have 3 discussions on your Australia's economic strategy. And last year, on the political side, we have seen momentous developments. The pandemic hit us hard, but the technology kept us together. We had the virtual summit that elevated our ties to a much higher level, as Honorable Prime Minister Modi says, that India is committed to expanding its relationship with Australia at a wider and faster pace. Prime Minister Morrison is equally engaged with the relationship. He has always said India is a friend and a natural partner, and this relationship has to be based on trust and mutual respect. So we have the political will, we have the living bridges with us, we have the societies we believe in shared prosperity and shared interests, and that is something we need to build upon. And the trade and investment ties, I think, they offer the biggest spectrum for expanding this relationship. In Australia, there's a lot of talk about developing resilient global supply chains, diversifying its partners, deepening its engagement with the Asian continent, and I think India perfectly fits over there. There's a great reckoning over there, and both sides are equally engaged with the thing. I wish you all the very best. I look forward to the outcomes, and we look forward to build upon that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Consul General Mr. Gupta, for your encouraging message and insightful overview. We'll now have a message from Minister M.C. Sampath, the Honourable Minister for Industries, Government of Tamil Nadu.
I am happy to address Tech and Innovation Virtual Delegation, event organized by the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce. Congratulations to the IACC on bringing together business trade body representatives from India and Australia. The Tamil Nadu is one of the most progressive and industrialist state in India. During the COVID period alone, we have signed 73 MOUs with an investment rupees 60,674 crores and employment potential to 1,721 persons. In addition to this, on 16th February 2021, 28 new MOUs with an investment of rupees 28,053 crores and employment opportunity for 68,775 persons were signed. The Tamil Nadu Industrial Policy 2021 launched recently aims to make Tamil Nadu the global destination to invest, innovate and create products and associated services. The policy aims to attract investment worth INR 10 lakh crore and create employment opportunities for 20 lakh people by 2025 and to achieve an annual growth rate of 15% in the manufacturing sector. The Government of Tamil Nadu has announced several innovative policies such as aerospace and defense policy, revised IT policy, electric vehicle policy, electronic and hardware manufacturing policy. Information and technology is an important sector in Tamil Nadu. Chennai is known as the SAS, capital of India. Tamil Nadu has excellent optical fiber cable OFC network with 3 submarine cable leading in Chennai. The state has highest available bandwidth of 14.8 Tbps amongst Indian states. I am proud to say that Tamil Nadu, the second largest economic in India, has emerged as the top investment destination in India despite the COVID-19 pandemic. We assure your continuous support and I invite you to sign Tamil Nadu's aspirational journey to ensure progress and prosperity for everyone and benefit from Tamil Nadu's growth model that is vibrant, inclusive and offers everything for everyone. Thank you. Nandri. Vanakkam.
Our sincere thanks to the Minister and the Government of Tamil Nadu for this message, especially Guidance Tamil Nadu, who is a key partner for the Chamber. We now move on to the keynote addresses. how tech and innovation can help drive the comprehensive strategic partnership, a reflection on the implementation of the India economic strategy and the Australia economic strategy in this sector, and what coordinated action is needed going forward from here. We'll first have the keynote address by Mr. Peter Burgess, AO, author of the India Economic Strategy to 2035 and is the Chancellor of the University of Queensland. I'll introduce Peter. So Peter Burgess began as Chancellor of the University of Queensland in July 2016. Prior to this, Mr. Burgess's extensive career in public service in diplomacy spanned 38 years and included senior positions in foreign affairs, trade policy, and intelligence. He served as Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade 2012 to 2016. Previous senior appointments included High Commissioners to India 2009 to 2012, High Commissioner to Malaysia 2000 to 2002, Director General of the Office of National Assessments, and Senior Advisor International to the Prime Minister of Australia from 2003 to 2004. Mr. Burgess was the author of a comprehensive India economic strategy to 2035, commissioned by the Australian Prime Minister and submitted in July 2018. As Peter mentioned in the IES, science and innovation cuts across the whole economy and is important in every industry. We are delighted to have Mr. Burgess here with us today and to deliver a keynote address at this closing session. He'll speak on the topic, how tech and innovation will help deliver the comprehensive strategic partnership, a reflection on the implementation of the IES for this sector, and what coordinated action is needed from here on. So delighted to have you, Peter, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Petula, and can I say how delighted I am to be involved in this closing session and to welcome the initiative to have this delegation. I think it's a very important step in terms of building links in the science, technology, innovation areas. And it's a timely moment, I think, for Australia and India to be looking at the innovation agenda, because the broader context in which our bilateral links are developing, I think, is moving in some very favourable directions. The bilateral relationship at the government-to-government level is as strong as it's ever been. I think, in fact, it's in something of a sweet spot. The adoption by both sides of the comprehensive strategic partnership, the relationship that our two prime ministers have developed, the way in which economic and geopolitical agendas are coming much closer together, and of course the very significant role that the Indian diaspora in Australia is playing and will continue to play in the development of the relationship. I think now that we have both the India economic strategy, in which I was closely involved, and Ambassador Wadwa's very comprehensive Australian economic strategy, we have two documents, two roadmaps to help us build this relationship, and each of those strategies rightly places a very strong emphasis on the innovation and science agenda, and each points to ways in which these can be strengthened. So I think as both of our countries move into our post-COVID economic planning, which inevitably will require recalibrations of economic policies and settings, because COVID has been such a large hit to our economies. The role of science and innovation, I think, will come into much sharper relief. And all of this is, of course, happening when our geopolitical environment is shifting very significantly. And one of the consequences of that is that the diversification of our trade relationships, I think, for both our countries is going to become a much higher priority. And for Australia, India is very high on a diversification strategy. And I think the adoption of the Australian economic strategy suggests that for India, Australia is coming more and more towards the centre of its attention. Now, there's probably no more single area in our economic trajectories that will be as influential in the longer term as the science, technology, and innovation agendas, because innovation is going to be the key to productivity gains in the medium to long term. And productivity gains are, of course, the key to economic growth. So for each of our economies, while they're obviously in different phases, that innovation agenda is going to be hugely important, and it opens up the prospect of developing, I think, a very deep partnership between our two countries. And it's really the language of partnership that will frame the way in which Australia and India can move forward together to advance the science and technology connections and the science and technology relationship. Let me mention just a few things which are relevant to the India economic strategy, and I think they are complementary to the work of Ambassador Wadhwa in the Australian economic strategy. And these are initiatives that we can take. Some of them have already started. Others need to be deepened, but together they constitute, I think, a substantial agenda for the Australia-India innovation relationship. So firstly, our strategic research fund, which I think is a very, very important platform and vehicle for building research partnerships between our two countries. And I think the significant feature of the Australia-India Strategic Research Fund is that it focuses on issues of national concern and priority for each country. And I think in that way, it's a great example of how we can combine our skills and expertise to help us address really challenging national issues for each of our country, whether it's areas like water or energy or agriculture or minerals and mining. I mean, these are all issues that go to the heart of Australia's economic base, and I think which are also highly relevant to India's economic future. So building that strategic research fund, adding to its funding, and both in my report and in the Australian economic strategy, there were direct recommendations for increasing the funding, I think is very important. I think where our universities head together is going to be essential in this area, because in Australia, the universities are the sort of baseload providers of research and development. In India, they also play a very important role, and none of that is to in any way diminish the importance of the private sector in building up innovation links. But the more we can bring our universities with their deep research capabilities together, the better. And in the case of my own university, the University of Queensland, we have established a joint research academy with Delhi IIT, and we are well advanced in a joint PhD program. But more importantly, I think we're well advanced in identifying research topics which go to the heart of national challenges for India. So I think it's a nice example of the way in which the research and innovation agenda can be dovetailed to fit in with broader national priorities. So that university-to-university relationship, and now there are other examples, many other examples of those sorts of partnerships, I think are going to be very important. India is a country which has a remarkable culture of startup innovation. And I think this is an area where Australia can learn a great deal from India. And it is also an area where we can work much more closely together. Australia has had these so-called landing pads where we've set up arrangements in other countries to help Australian companies, Australian startups plug into a broader research and venture capital ecosystem. And that's precisely the sorts of things we should be doing more of. So I hope very much, and I recommended it in my report, that we can add India to the list of Australian landing pads. And I think it would make a lot of sense for that concept to also apply to an Indian landing pad in Australia. In other words, an area that is ready to promote and cultivate the links between Indian startups and tech companies and Australia. So I think that startup space is very important. I think one other area which perhaps receives less attention, but which I think is crucial to our long-term collaboration on this, is to link our innovation strategy with our investment strategies. I see investment as being a very strong supporting pillar of the broader bilateral economic relationship. And I think the more we can encourage Australian investment into the science, technology and innovation space in India, and the more that we can encourage Indian investment into the science and technology space in Australia, the better. And India is probably further advanced in areas of venture capital when it comes to technology than Australia is. So again, I think this is an area where we can learn from India and where we can deepen our partnership in the process. So when I look to the future, I see science and innovation as one of the key elements of a much more broadly based economic relationship. I think particularly in our post-COVID planning, we need to put it squarely at the center of our national agendas. And as we do that, I think we need to be looking for as many opportunities of partnership with each other. So I hope this delegation's visit has taken us one step further in that process, that it has created important linkages between companies, that it has added to the appreciation of the Indian IT sector in terms of what Australia has to offer, and very importantly, that it has added to the understanding of the Australian IT, in the Australian IT sector, of both the expertise, the capabilities, but importantly, the areas of potential opportunity and partnership between us in this sector. So I wish the delegation every success as you finish up your visit, and I look forward to continuing to work to ensure that our science, technology and innovation agenda remains a high priority for both of our countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter, for those fantastic insights on how tech and innovation will help drive CSP and giving us an update on the implementation of the IES and your thoughts on what we could do from here on. It's great to have you giving the Australia perspective. There could be no one better than you to do that, being the author of the IES. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll now move on to hearing from Ambassador Anil Wadhwa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pitula. This is Deepak here. Before we move to Ambassador Wadhwa, I want to take a moment to thank Consul General Mr. Manish Gupta for being here with us today. I know you have to run, sir, for another engagement, so thanks again for your words and your encouragement to the chamber. Thank you. Let me now quickly introduce Ambassador Anil Wadhwa. He's been a member of the Indian Foreign Service from 1979, and in this period he served as ambassador, the Indian ambassador to Italy, to Thailand, Oman, Poland, Lithuania, and San Marino. He's also been posted to many diplomatic offices in the Asia-Pacific region and also the permanent mission of India to the United Nations. Currently, Ambassador Wadhwa is a partner at India Pathfinder Strategic Advisors. He's working on how to bring foreign companies, investments, and acquisitions into India. I think most important, like Mr. Varghese said, Ambassador Wadhwa is also has been instrumental in preparing the Australia Economic Strategy Report that was commissioned by the Ministry of Commerce and CII, which was released just a few months ago in December 2020. And we are most excited because Ambassador Wadhwa has also agreed to play a very key role in the Indo-American Chamber, chapter in Northern India, and we are very, really looking forward, Ambassador Wadhwa, to your advice and direction there. So, with that, let me hand it to you for your comments.
Thank you very much, Deepak. Let me begin by saying that the deliberations at this virtual trade mission over the past few days have been most timely. They've actually reinforced the underlying assumption in the Australia Economic Strategy Report, which we released in New Delhi in November 2020, that Australia is actually an ideal strategic partner for India as it moves to achieve a transformative and inclusive economic growth. And India actually needs to meet the needs of its growing and aspirational population, overcome the challenges of rapid urbanization that we are seeing, infrastructure development which is happening, and at the same time provide availability of resources. And that includes things like clean water and minerals to its population, accompanied with a relatively high growth. So it's a very challenging task indeed. We've seen some recent Indian reforms in many sectors that includes areas like mining, like healthcare, agriculture, power and defense, space, electronics and textile sectors. They're all very far-reaching reforms. All of them dovetail very well into the Australia Economic Strategy for India. In fact, the cabinet in India has also announced incentives for different sectors, at least 10 to 12 sectors for the manufacturing boost. And this happens in addition to electronics and mobile handsets, which was announced earlier. As a matter of fact, around 24 sectors have been identified for the incentive schemes in future. So that is a big opportunity for Australian companies to move in as quickly as possible. Also, I must add here that new funding has been announced for the healthcare sector in particular. And then we have a new definition now of medium and small enterprises, which has been revised. In fact, India today is focusing on simplifying the difficulties faced in land acquisition, in labor laws, reform and liquidity in order to attract more investments. Our trade ministers have met and agreed on a resilient supply chains initiative with Japan in September last year, and a similar initiative has been discussed in a meeting of the Quad countries at the ministerial level on 6th of October last year. So there are excellent prospects for enhancement of our economic ties in some key areas which have been identified under the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which includes areas like scientific and health cooperation, space and defense, critical minerals and related technologies, water resources management, training and education, the circular economy, waste to wealth processes, brains management and logistics, and now cyber technologies, which are receiving a lot of attention in both countries. Now, Peter referred to the startup space and the difference that India and Australia are making in this space. I must say that India, I would agree, has made some remarkable progress in the past few years. In fact, there is abundant supply today of tech talent in the country, and our support at the governmental level for what we call frugal innovation and also continued support of the central and the state governments has ensured a very steady progress in this area. We have the Atal Innovation Mission, which is set to roll out products and applications across the board on a scaled up basis now. And as part of this mission, the government in India has created a lot of tinkering labs in schools where students can experiment with concepts like 3D printing, use of artificial intelligence and robots. And this was unthinkable just a few years ago. I would say that India needs technology to solve problems in many areas like financial inclusion, healthcare, in its education side, in the affordable housing sector, and telemedicine, etc. This can only be done jointly with the private sector coming into play. Digital infrastructure has indeed emerged as a more significant infrastructure requirement as compared to the traditional infrastructure necessities that we have already of power and roads, etc. And it's very crucial for India to augment the digital infrastructure to utilize the frontier technologies so that there is continued economic development. Peter also referred to the innovation side in Australia and how Australia also has a very strong innovation and digitally driven sector, which is very actively supported by the government, the corporates, and the educational institutions in particular. But I would add to that a very strong economy, and there's a corporate backing as well. The founders have a risk-taking attitude culture, and there's a strong focus indeed on technology and innovation in Australia, which has made the startup sector the highest job creator in the country. The Australian startup space can easily access the opportunities, I believe, of scaling up in India in the areas that we have, which I just named, like financial inclusion and cybersecurity in particular. And then, of course, we have healthcare, data support and classification, sports technologies, textile designing, resistant cropping and crop mapping, defense and space technologies, and management of data flows. And this is in addition to the traditional areas like medtech, edutech, and water and power solutions, which have been also identified in our two respective reports. So rapid scaling up of collaboration in cybersecurity space, by which we fulfill each other's needs, will help both India and Australia to protect their industry and public and defense assets. Now, I will not go more into the details of what has been identified clearly through the Australia Economic Strategy Report. I must say that I received great support from CII and KPMG in this. Bhavik is going to speak after me, so he will highlight that role. But I would just like to say that the actual implementation of what has been identified now remains the key. In fact, technology and innovation need governmental intervention and support. And Australia-India Startup and Innovation Funds has been recommended in the report. That needs to be started with a modest 20 million US dollars to be contributed by each side over the next 5 years. And that's not a large amount at all, but it will do a lot to give to boost the sector and give the necessary push in the beginning. And also, India and Australia need to take steps, as Peter said, to contribute just 20 million US dollars each to the Australia-India Scientific Research Fund over the next 5 years in order to make sure that the good work which has been undertaken is kept on. Of course, big businesses in both countries are required for the future growth of technology and innovation between the two sides, and explore the investment route, as Peter mentioned, which will drive our trade forward. The business-to-business linkages, therefore, need some more strengthening. And this can be done through more contacts between specialized trade bodies and associations and specific business talks, such as this one that we are participating in. We have a business forum between the two countries, which is not met now for many months, and that must be revived and start specific working groups, including work on technology and innovation, so that it can work during the intersessional period and also come up with some recommendations. The pandemic period has offered opportunities for talking and preparing on virtual platforms, and the states in India and in Australia must engage with each other through this medium in the interim. So overall, I think governments on both sides need to review implementation strategies on a 6 monthly basis, and discussions need to take place on how to remove our trade and investment barriers continuously, so that it facilitates business in engaging with each other, and that can cut across federal and state levels as well as across different ministries. So this will, I believe, include easing of our regulatory policies which hinder rapid expansion of business ties. Now, identifying sectors for mutual investments in the post-COVID world in general, in both India and Australia, that must be done, and we must realize that our future together lies in supporting the entrepreneurial mindset with an enabling network of actors that includes the government, businesses, and the academics, in order to fulfill the growing demand that we have for high value customized services through new technologies and utilization of data as well as innovation. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ambassador Wadhwa. Thanks so much. I think you really laid out the rainbow for all of us involved in Indo-Australian ties, and we really hope that the Chamber can have a great role as a catalyst in what you said about actually implementing what these reports are laying out. So thanks again, and we look forward to your continued participation in the Chamber's activity in our Northern India chapter. We'll move on now to, I want to invite Bhavik Damodar, who's the managing partner, Mumbai, and the partner for deal advisory for KPMG. And KPMG has been a great partner for us in this trade mission. They've been our content partner in creating and curating the themes and the discussions. And Bhavik himself, has, like Ambassador Wadhwa said, been very involved in kind of laying out the Indo-Australian opportunity. At KPMG, of course, Bhavik heads the deal advisory, has been involved for many years now in running and advising clients on deals, including their diligence and so on. And Bhavik, I'm going to hand it over to you now for some insights on what you got as takeaways, both from this mission and overall from the Indo-Australian conversations of the last year.
Thank you, Deepak. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. And I'd just like to pick up from where Mr. Wagis and Ambassador Wadhwa left off. And whilst there are many areas of collaboration, both in the Australia strategy for India as well as the India strategy for Australia, the real kind of success would be defined on how well these are implemented. And based on the discussions over the last couple of days across various sessions, I had some kind of practical insights or recommendations that I thought I could talk about, where governments could cooperate with each other, the government institutions could cooperate with each other. We could have working groups like these, or you could have company-to-company relationships. And a few sectors where I thought we could kind of do a lot more together is on the health tech side. I think India could actually build the right support for Australian health tech companies. India is a great market for helping Australian companies try out their products at a really, really large scale. And then there could also be specific collaborations around medical devices, areas like cancer research, clinical trials, because I think India can do it at a very economical cost with a very large base, and also, innovations in terms of, manufacturing of medicines. Again, I think Peter Varghese spoke a lot about how we could come together in many areas of technology. And the next area where I think we could work together would be fintech. Again, Australia has got, especially in the New South Wales region, on the fintech side. And India could leverage the Australian technologies on SME lending and screening for our own SME lending sector, which is growing very, very rapidly. India has got a very extensive fintech talent pool, which a lot of Australian companies, in my view, can actually leverage to, commercialize, develop their products, and then also test it out in the Indian market. Education has been a focus sector of both the Indian and the Australian strategies. And I think EdTech is again something where there could be a lot of collaboration happening. Australia has got a fantastic vocational educational setup and have actually achieved a lot of progress here. And I think India could learn here as we go on to, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and we are thinking about, increasing jobs, increasing the kind of work we do in the manufacturing space. I think we've got a lot to learn. And I think on the vocational education side, we could actually have some practical tie-ups between TAFE and NSDC or other organizations that could kind of work. The next sector is agri-tech. Again, India has got goals to really improve agricultural productivity. And I think Australia has done significant strides in agri research to improve productivity, especially in challenging weather conditions. The global warming, I think, we're seeing new challenges as we go on every year, across different sectors. I think Australian companies could also invest in some of the mega food parks to improve processing as well as, cold chain and storage technologies. And also, I think from a logistics perspective, if there is know-how that can be shared, these could be company-to-company tie-ups or subsectoral tie-ups where, we could increase the usage of smart technologies like smart storage in silos, and, how can we monitor the condition of agricultural produce that is stored, etc. I think on the R&D side, a lot has been spoken, so I don't want to repeat on what's been said. But I think both governments can increase collaboration on specific areas of science and research. And under the scheme of promotion of academic and research collaboration, a lot more could be done here. India and Australia have also set up the Australia-India Strategic Research Fund. Again, it is jointly funded and managed by the governments and involves the top 100 universities. I think a lot more could also be done under this foundation. There are many more, actions that I could speak about, but I am conscious of time. And I think along with all of these specific actions, some, enabling factors like a joint working group for each of these sectors with senior government level involvement and then private involvement would be actually good to have. Simplified visa processes across both the countries and connectivity, I think, would be hugely beneficial. Though, in the current times, as they say, geography is history because everything is virtual and a lot of virtually. At some point in time, people will need to interact with each other physically, and I think that those processes would help. And I think strengthening the CEO forum and other industry associations by these subsectors could be a big influence in how quickly the strategy is implemented. With that, I would hand over back to you, Petula and the team, and kind of happy to address any more questions offline.
Thank you, Petula. Yeah, thank you, Bhavik. Bhavik, I had just one question before we let you go. While a lot of the discussions we've had over the last 2 days and also in the both the India economic strategy and the Australia economic strategy documents looked at bilateral, right? So it's about how India can help Australia, how Australia can help India. But are there areas that you feel where the complementariness that both Ambassador Wadhwa and Mr. Varghese spoke about can actually influence other geographies and other economies of the world, right? I mean, for instance, in cybersecurity, if we bring the research capability of Australia, the tech capability of India, and together it becomes a force that other economies can use. So any thoughts on that before I let you go?
No, absolutely, Deepak. That's a great question, and in my view, I think definitely an area where I think the countries could work together, because I think we have complementary skills, and like India has had a stated mission, for example, in Make in India, saying not only make for India but make for the world.
Yeah.
That applies on many of these strategies, whether it is on the services side, where India is already very strong, whether it's on the pharmaceuticals and healthcare side, where I think the complementary capabilities will be a very strong reckoning force on how things happen, or even on things like agri-tech, etc., where you can really test out a number of technologies to a large scale, and then commercialize them to the rest of the world. So absolutely, I think the horizon is not only the bilateral relationship, but also serving many other countries.
Thank you. Thanks, Bhavik. And thanks again to KPMG for partnering with the IICC on this event.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. I think we're coming to the end of this session, and sadly, the end of our trade mission, though I think Petula would say that she's happy that this went on well and she can get some sleep after this. But to formally give a vote of thanks, I want to call my co-chair for the technology industry subsector, Mr. Suresh Raman. Suresh is the Vice President and Regional Head for TCS in Chennai, and he's had a long career with the TCS. And during this period, he's played many roles. But I think right now, of course, he's handling TCS's. I think it's the largest center, Suresh, 70,000 people in Chennai.
Yes.
Very involved, of course, with the chamber's activities and with what we're trying to do in Australia. He's also on the board of the IICC. So, Suresh, I'm going to hand it to you to thank all the people who made this possible.
Thank you, Deepak. It's wonderful working in this event, and I remember the days when we started off thinking about it, deliberating all of us, Deepak and Petula and Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj. I think it's a wonderful thing. It has come to this fashion, and I'm really touched on the success of this event. Anyway, greetings and good afternoon, and good morning and good afternoon to all of you. Thanks to the dignitaries who participated in our closing session today. Mr. Manish Gupta, Consul General of India, Consulate General of India in Sydney, for his opening remarks. Through Mr. M.C. Honorable Minister for Industries, Government of Tamil Nadu, for the special address, and thanks to the guidance Tamil Nadu, especially with Dr. Neeraj Mittal and his team, Mr. Peter N. Verghese, AO, India Economic Strategy, and the Chancellor, the University of Queensland, and the Ambassador, Mr. Anil Wadhwa, author, Indo-Australian Economic Strategy, for the keynote address. Mr. Bhavik Damodar, Office Managing Partner, Mumbai, Partner Deal Advisory, KPMG India Services. Thanks a lot to you. Overall, real thanks to the Australian government and the Indian government for their immense support. Thanks to our chamber members, partners, working group, and of course the secretariat team and the executive council and chapter committees. This virtual tech and innovation trade mission was conceptualized based on the key focus areas as called out in the India Economic Strategy report by Mr. Peter Verghese and the Australia Economic Strategy by Mr. Anil Wadhwa. Many people like me, I think, have been fortunate in contributing in at least in small way to these reports. And this tech innovation trade mission started off with an important roundtable discussion on the combined roles of government, industry, and academia in fostering innovation through collaboration. And earlier in the closing session, we heard on how tech and innovation can help drive the comprehensive strategic partnership and coordination action that is needed for going forward. We had several impactful conversations around 5G, AI, and national infrastructure, and an empowered next generation workforce enabled growth towards achieving the $5 trillion economy. Growth ecosystem, startup, and the innovating for uncertainty was covered. We also dwelt on the fintech, edtech, health tech, e-commerce, and retail tech, etc., and all the things which Bhavik touched upon. Overall, these 16 sessions we have curated. We have set a lot of growth path for the future. In this slide, I would like to thank Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj, President of the Chamber, Mr. Deepak Padaki, Vice President of the Chamber, and Ms. Petula Thomas, Director, I think for the leadership and other working group members, Michael Costa, John Kenny, Gavin Stanton, Nityanand Sagaram, Rohit Manchanda, and One Lens. And the Chamber Secretariat led by Petula, Aditya, Chandini, Minu, and Edgar, who worked round the clock to make this a grand success. Of course, special thanks to all the partners, the sponsors, I should say, platinum partners, including my own company TCS, Telstra, and the Government of New South Wales, Gold Partners, Tractors and Farm Equipment Limited and NTAP, Silver Partners, State Government of Victoria, Guidance Tamil Nadu, Invest Karnataka, Industries and Commerce Department, Government of Karnataka, INQ Innovation Global, and One Lens. The knowledge partner KPMG, especially Bhavik Damodar, Saurabh Nanadev, and Sunayana Bhatia. The supporting partners included Australian Government in India, the High Commission of India Canberra, the Confederation of Indian Industry CI, the Australia-India Business Council AIBC, the Export Council of Australia ECA, FinTech Australia, TAI Hyderabad, NASCOM, Centre of Excellence IoT, Tourism Australia, and ARMED, our platform partner. We are excited to participate in implementing this charter and taking technology, innovation, and partnership between India and Australia to the next level. Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce has provided further trust to this collaboration and trade, getting into the next level of maturity. I'm sure ideas that are generated in the past 1 week over 16 sessions will also get realized, and we'll actively engage in the Science and Innovation Industry Sector Leadership Forum. Thank you once again from all of us at the Chamber.
Thank you so much, Suresh. And I think, as Deepak said, this is a series. We hope the next time we'll bring a delegation in person to Australia with having both you, that's Suresh, and Deepak as the co-chairs in our Science and Innovation Industry Sector Leadership Forum. So hopefully this is just the first part with many more to come. Thank you everyone for watching, for being here with us, for making this a huge success, and we look forward to taking this from strength to strength. And on behalf of the President Sanjeev Bajaj, the Vice President Deepak Padaki, Mr. Suresh Raman, who's a co-chair of the Industry Sector Leadership Forum, thank you, and we will definitely be in touch to follow up and take this forward. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Bhavik. Bye then.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.